There are a few individuals that are really getting their voice out there and making a difference, and I think our next speaker, Steele, is most definitely one of those individuals. Like me, you'll probably see him a lot on social media, see him a lot at events, speaking out, articulating a very clear, very responsible view, in my view, about the future of wildlife protection, animal welfare in this country, and making a real impact. A great media operator, a great campaigner, and a great addition, I think, to the voice for wildlife in this country from a younger generation. You're a law undergraduate, I understand. You've been involved, obviously, as an environmental campaigner for many years. You're a spokesperson for Bartlett sports, typically more, which is something you're going to be talking a lot about, I think, in terms of the work that's been going on with Mark Avery and others to really draw attention to the environmental impacts of driven grouse shooting. And obviously, we had a major debate on that issue in Westminster this week. And at the moment, I think you're now campaign manager for animal rights organisation Animal Aid. Is that right? That's right. Congratulations. Okay, I'm going to hand over to Steele, and welcome. Thank you. Let's have a round of applause.
So, thanks again for the introduction. I'm Steele. I'm the campaigns manager for Animal Aid, spokesperson for Banned Blood Sports in Baltimore, and I'm also a final year law undergraduate focused on animal protection and environmental law. So, as Dom says, it feels really good to be here at the Bartlett Trust Conference, speaking to all these wonderful people, each and every one of you who's passionate in your own individual way about protecting our wildlife and protecting animals in this country. As we all know, it's a sad occasion that wildlife all across the UK and across the world is literally under siege at the moment. From the left, from the right, from the centre, we're seeing persecution on the rise. We're seeing legal forms of persecution becoming increasingly prevalent. The first of those that I'm going to go into is grouse shooting. Now, grouse shooting over the past 3 years has become a really dominant key battle for wildlife. We see that up on the uplands in Yorkshire, where I'm from, we see almost 1 million grouse every year shot down in the name of sport. We see that those moors where these grouse live are covered in traps, covered in snares, and gamekeepers are going out shooting foxes, trapping hen harriers to the point of extinction. There are no hen harriers nesting anymore on grouse moors in the UK because they've been persecuted. We see that the moors, to sustain the large numbers of grouse that are needed to keep the shooting industry's profits coming in and its shooting days going on, they're burnt, damaging the peat bogs underneath, releasing carbon. The biggest source of carbon emission in the country from the peatlands is burning for grouse shooting. We see that these moors are drained. We see that the shooting industry is simply saying this isn't going on. But we've been up there ourselves with campaigners over the last 3 years, documenting time and time again new drainage being built to drain the peatland, to destroy that habitat so it can sustain more and more grouse and become a monoculture, which is what the shooting industry needs to survive. We're seeing that this is causing flooding in the towns below, wiping out vast areas for wildlife year on year on year, towns literally going underwater all across Yorkshire and the north. But there is hope. We've managed this year for the first ever time to push this issue into Parliament through sheer force, through sheer numbers, getting behind this cause from all across the board, from people who care about the environment, who care about animal protection, who care about wildlife as part of animal protection, as well as other issues. And we're seeing, for example, in Parliament, we've come across the usual names that they're time and time again defending these immoral and unjust causes, speaking up for the shooting industry, speaking up for fox hunting, speaking up for badger culling, the same names, the same faces, time and time again, sticking up for their own self-interest, which is hunting, shooting and killing our wildlife for fun. But for the first time we've managed to push against that, we've managed to fight back against that and simply say, this can't go on. This simply cannot go any longer. We cannot see wildlife shot for the sport and fun of a privileged few. We can't see species literally driven into extinction in large tracts of lands where they should be prevailing. We can't see foxes, stoats, weasels trapped by their millions, left sometimes lingering in these devices year on year on year. It simply cannot go on. And we cannot see this environmental degradation continuing that is associated with grouse shooting. So we're prepared to fight back. We pushed it into Parliament. As we've seen this week, we've come across the usual faces. But we should take pride in the achievement in itself that 120,000 people have got behind this cause over the space of 6 months and simply said this cannot go on. That in itself is a powerful force. We see the shooting industry, they might be celebrating at the moment. They might be turning around and saying, but there's a famous quote from Shakespeare, from Henry V, that he who does not have the guts to fight, depart now. Well, we're certainly the ones with the guts, and we're prepared to fight for our uplands, and we're prepared to do every single thing it takes to shut down ground shooting in this country and make sure that that persecution stops and this barbaric, outdated sport becomes illegal. We're also, at the moment, pushing on local authorities up in Yorkshire to get behind the ban on ground shooting. We've seen, for example, that Leeds Council, which has suffered the massive damage as a result of the burning on ground smalls, millions of pounds lost to the local economy, jobs because of the town flooding, getting behind a ban on driven ground shooting. We've seen, for example, Bradford Council now become isolated as the last local authority and the last part of the national park to allow ground shooting on its land as a public body. We forced Bradford into a corner now where they're literally launching a consultation on whether to stay or go with ground shooting. Through sheer force, through sheer people going up there and saying this cannot go on anymore. So I come on to the next issue that's really key for wildlife in this country, is pheasant shooting. So we see, for example, some of the issues that are prevalent with ground shooting also flowing into other areas. We see millions of birds every year in this country on shooting estates, up and down, being shot for sport. Many of these birds simply get winged. They die, they fall flat on the floor, still alive, without any veterinary attention, and are left to die until they have their necks snapped by a beater. That in itself is a key animal welfare issue that shouldn't be going on, particularly in the name of entertainment. We see, for example, that up in Yorkshire recently, we've seen buzzards cause on pheasant shooting estates. We've seen cases in Wales of poisoning in recent years. We've seen Natural England being forced by the High Court in what can only be described as an unjust decision to allow gamekeepers to go out willy-nilly shooting buzzards to protect pheasants, simply so those pheasants can be killed in the name of sport. We see foxes and stoats, for example, again trapped and snared. We're seeing pied martins that have been pushed into virtual extinction because of pheasant shooting estates and gamekeepers. And we're seeing other issues as well. We see that nearly all of these birds that are shot on pheasant shooting estates are mass produced in factory farms. Now, Animal Aid has gone undercover time and time again in these farms, as have our colleagues at the League Against Cruel Sports. You might have all seen last Monday on BBC London an expose where BBC reporters went undercover inside game farms and filmed partridges being mass produced for the gun in barren, tiny metal cages, which is a far cry from the propaganda the shooting industry puts out about a few pheasants that are shot for the pot and live their life wild and free. We're seeing nearly 2 million birds every year factory farmed for this purpose, and it can't go on. We've simply got to stop it. So we've seen, for example, that a ban on the factory farming of pheasants is now on the table. We're seeing widespread support. We've even seen, until they were pressured from other shooting lobby colleagues, the British Association for Shooting, as vile and as ghastly as they are, getting behind a ban on the cages until they were pushed out of it from the shooting lobby. We've seen MPs coming out. We've seen DEFRA reports saying how cruel these cages are. And we're pushing forward. We're also seeing that the Welsh Government now has launched a public inquiry into whether pheasant shooting should be allowed to continue in the National Forest in Wales. We've been there to the pheasant shoots that are happening on public land. We've seen birds literally there dying, bleeding to death because of what is happening, because of the cruelty and the lack of care that gamekeepers put in. And we're forcing it through. We're putting it on the table so that we can go forward and ban pheasant shooting. Which brings us on to badger culling. Now obviously, the pheasant shooting goes hand in hand with the badger culling. We're seeing, for example, on the massive pheasant shooting estates of the southwest, are very key players in the badger cull, because the badgers simply disrupt the pheasant shooting operations by supposedly eating the poults. We're seeing that the pheasant shooting industry is letting out large tracts of land so that the badgers can be killed on them and allowing the gunmen on. And without these pheasant shooting estates, this would not go on. The land wouldn't be available there in a large enough number to continue the badger cull. We're seeing as well that badgers are being scapegoated by the farming industry, by a failing dairy industry, to justify the lack of TB controls, to justify the lack of vaccination going on, and the lack of biosecurity at markets, which is down to nothing but pure laziness. And we need to push. We need to keep pushing on the badger cull. We need to push to tighten up those controls, to get the vaccinations coming in, and to simply say to the dairy industry and the farmers that this cannot go on any longer. You cannot scapegoat badgers for your own pure laziness and your refusal to adhere to biosecurity controls. So each and every one of us in this room can make a difference. Each and every one of us in our own individual way, whether it's writing to our MPs and lobbying them, whether it's joining boycotts of dairy, whether it's going out and documenting the suffering on badger culling estates, on pheasant shooting and grouse shooting estates, and whether it's going out there and learning and knowing what's going on at your local badger sets in your town, in your village, all around you, and keeping an eye out for people that want to do harm through badger baiting. Each and every one of us can make a difference, and each and every one of us can make a change for wildlife. And when we all stand up together, it is us together that is a force that is strong, and a force for change in this country for the way wildlife is treated, and make sure that the grouse shooting industry, the pheasant shooting industry, badger culling and illegal persecution stops once and for all. Thank you.